All right, we are live. Welcome, guys, to the discussion group where it's my segment, and I will be answering people's questions and bringing up topics, and just generally having fun with everyone. So, today we had an important event that ended, which was Hajj. And if you're wondering why it's important at all, it's because a lot of people thought that Saudi Arabia and Qatar and UAE asked the United States to stop the strikes that were going to happen last week because of the Hajj. Saudi and all these other countries, they get a lot of money from people coming in from tourism. And people might think that, maybe that was enough to deter them. Um, and I wanted to see if that was a plausible reason. If anyone thought that might have been, like, is that grounds enough? And you guys can just go ahead.
I'm not sure I'm understanding. If you could just say that a little better.
Yeah, sure. So, um, Hajj is where Muslims go to Saudi Arabia to visit the house of God. And they're supposed to do that at least once in their lifetime. And it ends up being a huge source of revenue for Saudi Arabia. And then those tourists go to Qatar and they go to like the UAE and other countries in the Persian Gulf as well. Now, a lot of people think that because of that money from tourism, that Saudi Arabia asked the United States, like, hey, wait, don't strike right now. Strike like after this is over so we can get our tourism money. Like, do whatever you need to do just after. People think, okay, that was actually important enough to make the United States stop and postpone the strikes.
I think that's perfectly logical.
Okay.
That makes sense. I'm not saying I like it, but it totally makes sense. If you want these countries to coalesce with us, with the United States, um, that's not a bad or unfair ask. I don't like it. I'm really ready to see the Islamic regime just wiped out.
Yeah.
But when you're trying to win friends and influence people, sometimes you might have to capitulate. And I don't even know if I like the word capitulate, but you might have to meet meet them halfway.
Yeah. Um, Especially if they're trying to get these countries to sign the Abraham Accords, which means normalizing relations with Israel. It doesn't hurt to be nice to them and give in to some of their demands, like postpone the strike, sure, but to not strike, that's a whole different ball game. Does anyone else have an opinion? Oh yeah, go for it, Jeffrey.
So I don't think it's a primary issue. It almost surely was a strong secondary issue. And it's not so much a demand, it's being cognizant of the fact that that activity means a lot of people are coalesced in the same in the same area. And the Mullah regime has shown quite clearly that it does not give a shit about being discriminative in how it applies force. I mean, it's a terrorist regime, and it actually targeted in response to Operation Epic Fury, which was implemented in no insignificant manner because, wow, they're getting ready to mass launch ballistic missiles, drones, potentially armed with chem bio warheads. Like, these people don't care about, they would go out of their way to target areas that would result in a mass casualty event. So, it's being cognizant of, regardless of how you feel about Islam, I'm not shy about my criticism of that belief system. Independent of that belief system, there's a difference between criticizing that belief system and criticizing all the members of the Ummah, independent if they identify with that or not. Like, that's the difference between professional soldiers and fucking terrorists, one of many. We go out of our way to minimize collateral damage. And this would be one of those times, right? You have all these people at Hajj. The mullahs would have hit that. They would absolutely hit that just to cause mass casualty events. And it's good that they waited so that it would deny them their ability to do so.
Yeah, you're right. If they hit that, the mass casualties that would be reported would be something that would get so much publicity around the world. That would be that. I mean, that would maybe that's more than them striking the Persian Gulf Arab states. And not only does it stop people from showing up to Hajj, but it stops them showing up for years, probably afterwards as well. People would always think about that in their head, as long as the Islamic Republic is alive. They might do stuff like that. Yeah, it's a good point. Man, yeah, there's nothing they wouldn't do. You're right. They even talked about it on the Islamic Republic state media. Yeah, we'll build bioweapons. You know, why not? If we can't, why not blow up the United States' petrochemical plants? Why not attack them with bioweapons? I really need this to happen. Actually, I need this exact scenario to happen. I want a congressman or a senator to question one of these, like the pro-left Democrat senator or congressman, and be like, I'm going to show you a clip of what the Islamic Republic is saying they will do, and I want to hear your opinion on it. And they'll ask a question, be like, okay, they'll show the clip. The clip will be like, yes, we want to bomb and destroy America. We want to use chemical weapons, biological weapons, we want to nuke America or Israel or Europe. And then they'll ask, this pro-left senator, and they should be like, all right, so do you still believe that the Islamic Republic is doing good in the world? And I need that to circulate all over social media. And I don't know why they haven't done that yet. Well, I mean, to be fair, our Congress is full of, pretty old fossils. So, man, go ahead, Jeffrey.
Yeah, that has been done. I mean, not exactly that wording to that effect, though. And inevitably, what the response was, at least from the events that I remember, is that they try to flip it around and say, well, that they're somehow motivated to pursue WMDs because of something that allegedly the West has done. The fuck? I mean, wait. So they're concerned about Israel and or the United States. They drone strike fucking hotels in the Gulf states? The fuck? Right? What? They were so concerned. Yeah, you're not wrong. It definitely puts them on the spot, and that's something that I'll actually send that to my colleagues. That's a good idea. They're so fucking arrogantly self-absorbed. At this point, they'd tell you, like the left would tell you, the fucking air's made of mashed potatoes and expect you just to, like, with the sincerity of a musketeer. Nari just busted a fucking crazy ass traitor who last night was violating any number of federal laws, treason and aiding and abetting the enemy and all of it in Tehran. Like, this piece of shit has been doing that for fucking 36 years. Right? Ken O'Keefe, he's not an unknown person. That's how, like, indoctrinated these fucks are. That's why, again, the patriotic bloc fucking loves you. I promise you, man. I promise you. Yeah, and when the Iranian citizens showed exactly who they were, right, that the mullah regime doesn't represent them, I cannot tell you the depths of love the patriotic bloc has for you.
Yeah, it's absolutely to their benefit too. I mean, man, it's like it would be the greatest campaign for them to start being like, well, we're the ones that started eradicating radical Islam, things that took our predecessors, decades to do. And look at them. They ended up in, you could say, you could do the classic political thing. They ended up in the forever wars. They did all this, did all that. But we were the ones that chose the right country, chose the right group to back, and chose the right ideas to back. And, look how the world's progressing here. We're fighting against all of this. It's led us, the United States, by freeing Iran, by focusing our efforts to South America, to Asia, the Pacific. We're becoming a much more economically strong country, everything. And yeah, no, you're right, Jeffrey. Yeah, they love us independent of the benefits and for who we are, who we stand for. You're right. I would just like to return the kindness, because not many people are standing up for us at all. Yeah. In fact, another point that should be pointed out against the left is that not only are they very selective of who and what they choose to support in the moment, it's very trendy for them, but now that the Islamic Republic and the United States and Israel have a ceasefire, quote unquote, they have just kind of stopped attacking this as much. And it seems like they almost believe that, we're not going to go back to the strikes, but when we do, they're going to come back out and do their regular old thing where they ignore the people that died, they ignore everything else, why it's necessary, and they'll just be like, US bad, US bombing, this and that. So what do you guys think is the best way to deal with that? And I think this time it's probably going to be less, as in people are going to listen to it less, because it's a very numbing thing once you keep hearing, oh yeah, sure, America bad, whatever. But I feel like the PR team on the other way, like Trump's been repeating the same points for months about nuclear weapon, can't have it, this and that. And I feel like that's been doing more than people realize, so that when we go back to the strikes, it's actually, people are going to be like, oh yeah, that makes sense now. It makes sense why we're getting rid of this regime, rather than, oh man, we're just bombing more people in the Middle East again. Drew Samantha said, the left does not understand why jihadists with weapons of mass destruction are dangerous. The right does not understand why environmental disasters and contagious outbreaks are dangerous. I would argue there's people on both sides that think both of those things. And it really depends. But whoever is in power in these parties have important messages. And we'll actually talk about John Kerry and what he said in 2016 in a bit. But go ahead, Jeffrey. You want to respond?
So, I mean, I know that that's the idea. It was actually former President Teddy Roosevelt, a conservative Republican, that created the Conservation Corps and the National Park System. It was former President Nixon that created the EPA. And as far as contagious outbreaks are dangerous, there's some truth to that. The context of that, though, was in response to the left and Never Trumpers co-opting the Chinese Communist Party pandemic, Wuhan COVID-19. There's a reason I call it that. To get rid of Orange Man bad was to tell them to pretty much go fuck themselves, because they were tired of that shit. They knew exactly, in other words, the idea that we should respond to a pandemic caused by Chi-Com incompetence and then weaponized by Chi-Com dishonesty was, that they don't want to hear anything about it. So it's not like it's a de facto thing. I mean, there's some truth with, say, the very extreme right in the earlier part of the John Birch Society that said things like vaccines and fluoridation. It was a very minor group. It still was there. Or that's an ill-conceived commie plot. That was actually one of the things they included in Dr. Strangelove. That's where they got it. Again, President Teddy Roosevelt created the Conservation Corps and the National Park System, and President Nixon created the EPA. President Bush pushed for next-gen nuclear, just like this current president. So, which arguably is our biggest pellet in silver buckshot to address things like greenhouse gas emissions.
I see what you mean. Guys, I want to ask your opinion. So earlier on stream, we showed a clip about John Kerry I believe was the Secretary of State during Obama. Am I getting that right? Yeah. And guys, he basically says in the $55 billion package that they're going to give Iran, yeah, I mean, the IRGC might get it, which, like, right now, obviously, we know the IRGC and the Islamic Republic are, like, basically the same thing because the IRGC has control now. But back then, it was a little bit different. People didn't really get that. And he's like, yeah, the IRGC might get 55, they might get some of the $55 billion. Him admitting that means what? The IRGC funds terrorists all across the Middle East. So this guy just admitted, right, that all these terrorists are now going to get billions of dollars of funding to fight and kill Americans and Israelis. So that was a great revelation. That was done in 2016. I'm not sure how, that wasn't blown up more, at least on the Iranian side of social media for me. Like, I never saw that. The interview happened in 2016. And
yeah, I'm just trying to sorry to interrupt you. I'm just trying to read whether it could be damage control, it could be he's just an idiot. I think he is an idiot, but I don't know if he's also an idiot doing damage control. So
yeah,
I wanted to I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go for it.
I wanted to back up to something you said, whereas people will be like, "Oh, we're just bombing the Middle East again." Well, if you do bomb them, then it's Americans bombing them again, etc. But you think it kind of reminds me of what came first, the chicken or the egg, because we've been dealing with terrorism forever, and you can go back and go back and go back, and I appreciate going back in history. Well, we created what was the term they used to use, especially during Bush and Obama. Well, I don't know if it was really under Bush, but Obama, when you bomb them, you're creating more terrorists. And so it's like, what comes first, the chicken or the egg? So do we defend ourselves, or we go, oh no, we can't defend ourselves, can't bomb them, because now we're going to create more terrorists? And it's a ridiculous battle to hypothesize about at this point in this moment. I think we have to deal with what's going on today and deal with today to save the future instead of being worried about stepping on anybody's toes or upsetting anybody.
I see.
The American people are not blowing up their children. American people are not holding people while they're wearing a bunch of masks and beheading people and showing the videos through. We're not the ones who've been doing that for 20 years, at least 20 years, if not longer. We haven't been doing that. This is who they are. And as far as Kerry goes, I think one of the things that's most important to understand is when you're there's always the ways justify the means, where when it comes to a true leftist, it doesn't matter. They simple example, my job is to sell you a water softener. That's my job. So in order to do that, I have to convince you your water is dirty, and then you'll buy my product. Well, that's what the left has been doing for decades. What they're trying to do is tell you how bad America is, and now you have to buy my product. You have to buy my ideology so I can fix it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. Promote the instability, sell them weapons, security. I think I get it. Yeah. Jeffrey, and then Samantha.
Yeah, Kerry wasn't a fucking idiot. He absolutely said that shit as Secretary of State. And he's not he's a dumb guy. He's not like that dumb. Very much admitted that the money freed up, some of it would go to support terrorism. So yeah, no apologetics for Kerry. And not for nothing, John Kerry was busted violating the Logan's Act under President Trump's first term when he was an unregistered agent of influence for the fucking Mueller regime. The only reason he didn't go to jail is because a lot of people who masquerade as representatives are fucking whores for any number of people, including our enemies, taking their money. That's why Senator Graham said that shit. when he was calling stuff out like that about 5 years ago.
And Samantha?
Bombing terrorists is not what makes terrorists. Indoctrination is what makes terrorists.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, you know, it's funny that you guys are saying that. You know, going back to what Sherry said, the Obama administration, I think, bombed Middle East technically more than any other administration, save for maybe the Iraq War. But that makes sense. I mean, they gave $55 billion to, or like the package was supposed to be 55. A lot of it went to the IRGC. They funded the terrorists, and then, yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the model is here. How is that supposed to help terrorism get less? It only makes it grow if you give them more money. Man, I'm so sick and tired of these guys. They need to go back. They need to go back to the way they were before all this started. But after John Kerry admits that they gave all this money to the IRGC and subsequently all the terrorist groups, he then goes on to justify it. And this is how he justifies it. He says, well, the Persian Gulf Arab states, they spend $130 billion a year on defense. We're only giving $55 billion to the IRGC. You know, they can handle it. What do you guys think about that? Julie, go ahead.
Yeah, look, I've long wondered how much the economics plays into all of this. That there's always been money in war, and it seems to me, just even looking at America alone, that it has spent a lot of time funding both sides and making a lot of money out of it. There are people who own arms. This is just one aspect of it and not the only aspect of it. But there are arms dealers and there are money-making schemes. And I sometimes wonder if there isn't a big game going on behind the scenes where people think that they can keep things, they can keep a lid on things while at the same time they're actually promoting things. And I think about the situation in Israel where everybody complains about the so-called concessions. Well, they say it's money that was given to Israel for defense. In fact, they are just concessions, which makes a lot of money for America because it forces Israel into buying stuff from America. It earns them way more money than they spend. And at the same time, they were giving money in different ways to the Palestinian Authority under the guise of humanitarian aid, while knowing full well that it was going to help to make payments to terrorists under the Pay for Slay scheme. And it seems to me wherever I look all around the world, you've got this two-faced thing where there are these people who are driving both sides of the conflict. And I'm not saying it's the only thing at play here, but I'm saying that I'm seeing that it's part of, it might be part of the game.
Yeah, and that definitely happened. I mean, it's very profitable. Jeffrey, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I know that Kerry tried that bullshit attempt at rationalization. As someone who was deployed to Ground Zero immediately following the terrorist attack of September 11th, that was caused by 19 lunatics with box cutters. So I'm not saying you should hop over a pile of money to save a penny. I mean, I'm not like a budget hawk in that way. That said, it's equally dishonest to say, well, you know, the Gulf states collectively spend $190 billion, so it's okay to give the fucking mullah regime, read the largest state sponsor of terrorism in the world, $55 billion. Now, I don't want to give terrorists any money. You know, then again, a lot of those guys were getting kickbacks, right? Why do you think those individuals sat there and pushed to try? These are the same people under Biden's term, like begged Putin, after Putin illegally invaded Ukraine, to not stymie the JCPOA or Iran deal. These are the same pieces of shit that pushed to fucking have a $10 billion waiver from the Treasury Department so Putin's criminalized counterintelligence state fucking controlled nuclear energy company, read Rosatom, could sell 2 light water reactors to the Mullah regime that illegally occupies Iran. It has nothing to do. You know what's fucked up about all of this? Even, and this is like somebody, like I was the guy who coined guardedly optimistic regarding Obama when he was first inaugurated, even though we deeply disagreed with shit and very much lost that optimism very quickly. I actually agree with Obama's drone fucking program. What's my point? There's a difference between an actual policy analyst that can sit there and support, like a true policy analyst will try to determine, like try to push for policies the data shows are optimal because that's their responsibility as an analyst, versus these bags of shit who would sell their grandmother by the pound for a nickel if it gets them another vote, buck, invitation to a cocktail party. That's the difference. That's what these people were. When they're like, we got to save Ukraine. I agree. Why are you carving out $10 billion for Putin's Rosatom to sell 2 light water reactors to the Mullah regime? Oopsie doodle. I don't blame you, Ollie, for pining for the days where shit like this didn't happen.
Yeah, thank you. Sherry, go ahead.
I just had a quick comment about Carrie. It's been 7,790 days since John Kerry promised on national TV to sign Form SF-180 to release his military records. Don't ask me how I know, but I know it's been 7,790 days. And I'm guessing Jeff can tell you what an SF-180 is.
Yeah, please.
It's like, I'm going to do better than that. So when Kerry was running for presidency, I was actually taking classes at Georgetown's SFX, and Kerry lived 2 blocks away from my house. It's one of his houses. It's so like, you know, this is during the time when Kerry's like, reporting for duty. Okay, bro, let's take a look at your service, right? Since he brought it up. He was an officer for a PBR, right? 6 months, not a year like enlisted. Did all everybody who served with him fucking hated him because he was a fuck up as a commander, including when he threw a fucking hand grenade into a pile of rice and gave himself rice shrapnel and then wrote himself a fucking Purple Heart. Then came back and lied about his involvement in Vietnam and to like congressional investigation committees and slathered the entirety of everybody in Vietnam, like every U.S. personnel, as akin to something, what do you say, akin to Genghis Khan, and they dropped bombs on village, all this bullshit, and then threw somebody else's fucking medals over the damn fence. Right? Not even his own medals, threw somebody else's medals over the fence. So when he was doing his bid for presidency, there were others, that was the Swift boat vets that actually served with, in that same in that same capacity, who outed just how much of a piece of shit he really is. Do I respect the soldier he might have been when he first entered? Absolutely. I just don't believe he does. Right? I don't believe he does.
Yeah, I didn't know that he's okay. So he basically did a lot of shady stuff. basically, John Kerry is kind of like a wannabe Pete Hegseth, is what I'm hearing. Oh, okay. So Pedro wanted to ask something, and then after that, I want to ask you guys another question. Pedro, go ahead.
Yes. So what I want to ask is the following, like, we have reports that the U.S. confiscated a lot of illegal IRGC money in crypto money. Like, how much impact does the American blockade has on the IRGC financially, and how could this affect the IRGC internal fighting between each side?
Yeah, good question. So the U.S. Treasury seized $1 billion worth of crypto. I personally think that $1 billion was Mojtaba's money. He loves buying and building real estate around the world, and he has like a whole empire. A lot of it's in London, actually. And we think that right before the war started, he was trying to dump a lot of crypto into the UAE to get it out of Iran in case he had to flee. Now, whatever, right? $1 billion worth of crypto, when compared to the blockade, is actually not that much. The blockade is upwards of $500 million a day. So every 48 hours, you're seizing $1 billion worth. You can think of it like that. And the blockade's been in effect for over a month. So, where it's doing its work, which is why I can't fathom the fact that President Trump would give them or unfreeze billions of dollars worth of assets and just undo months of his work. If the strategy is to grind down the Mueller regime, why would you just undo most of your work by giving them a lot of money? And the effect that the blockade is having is, of course, they're getting starved, which means that it's becoming harder for them to pay their own people. The last people that they're going to cut funding from are the terrorist militias. Armin talked about this. They'll even resort to like not paying the IRGC. Be like, well, you guys are Iranian, like even if we don't pay you, like what are you going to do? You still have to work, because if you don't and the people rise up and take over, they're going to get rid of you. So the terrorist militias, they only fight for money and they can leave if they don't get paid. So we need to get them. Now, what eventually is going to happen is that the Islamic Republic will be cutting funding to so many different programs and to so many different people that even their own regime supporters are going to start turning against them. And at the end of the day, they'll only have a few core loyalists with the terrorist militias. At that point, it's a job pretty much done. And I think the Mossad head chief was alluding to that a couple of days ago when the Mossad chief said, yeah, if we just keep going the way we're going, they're falling within 7 months. And I always stress this, and I can't stress it enough, but war is very economical. It's been like this for thousands of years. If you can't feed, equip, and keep paying your army, you might as well not have one. And it can sometimes end up being, a very destructive weapon towards yourself. So that's kind of the effect that we're going for, Pedro. We're just trying to get them weakened enough to a point where we know 100% if we just slap on a few other factors, like striking them again, having the people uprising with weapons, that yes, they will definitely fall.
Thanks for that awesome response. So, what is your opinion, Jeffrey?
One of the things I brought up on Armin's show today is 3 lines of effort that's been pushed up the chain and starting to get some traction. And that's those 3 lines of efforts. Let me sit there and see. Here's what they are. So one is Operation Sovereign Tide, which is the United States should have a comprehensive military campaign to go after and grab the Mullah regime's Dark Sea fleet and all the yummy oil that's on there that they try to use to circumvent, say, sanctions and help the Chinese Communist Party. I put the link in the chat regarding the Fox News report on that today. The second line of effort centers around training members of the anti-mullah diaspora, specifically United States and or Canadians of Iranian descent, in lawful open intelligence gathering, so that, you know, it would be a comprehensive program that draws on top providers, including Intel Techniques, that's Michael Brazel's SANS Institute, you know, the Society for Competitive Open Source Intelligence, Society for Competitive Intelligence Professionals, a couple others, so that they can then engage in open image, signal measurement, and geo intelligence regarding those tankers and feed that to the United States respective agencies to carry out that effort. And the final one is to have Congress and the president create contemporary letters of marque, so that private actors that are sanctioned by the United States would help expand grabbing all the dark sea fleet tankers at scale. Then what would happen is they would confiscate, liberate those oil tankers, bring them to a U.S. port, sell them at market price, either prior to Operation Epic Fury or current price, whatever. The proceeds, sans the cost of the operation, is given to His Highness Prince Reza Pahlavi as the head of the transitionary government that is recognized as the official government in exile and or Iranian people. So it will cause a couple of things there, right? A lot of positive effects. So what are they? One is it will deny the regime remnants the ability to monetize his oil through sanctions enforcement, financial warfare, and logistics interference. The seizure will sit there and provide revenue to His Highness Prince Reza Pahlavi and the transitionary government to support any number of activities, including Track 2 material supports. It will deny the Chinese Communist Party the oil that they are getting from the Mullah regime remnants, and subsequently not only choke the Mullah regime of financial resources, it would undermine the incentive of the Chinese Communist Party to continue to provide the Mullah regime remnants the means to repress Iranian people. And finally, it would bring down gas prices. Everybody wins, except for the fucking mullahs. Oh, and the chai comes.
It's a great idea. It's a great idea. Guys, there's two things I want to say. President Trump is holding on to his points, like in terms of the deal, right? It hasn't changed in months. It's been the same thing. No matter how many, like 20, 30 times the negotiations have happened and they've exchanged agreements, it's always been the same thing: no nuclear weapons, certain homes must be free, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm personally, I'm kind of surprised at how much patience he's got about this. But also, a side note, President Donald Trump posted on Truth Social saying, "Watch Mark Levin tonight at 8, a big show." After this, I'm going to try and find some clips about it. I don't know what they're going to talk about there, but Mark Levin's been saying this entire time what we've been saying, and he's pretty much on the same page that we are. And he's been really, really building this narrative for his conservative or Republican or pro-MAGA American audience, patriotic American audience. What he's been pushing to them super, super hard for a few months now is the Mullah regime has to go. The Islamic Republic has to be over with. There's no other way around it. That's all he's been pushing them. And I'm glad to see that President Trump is going back and being like, yes, watch Mark Levin's show. I want you guys to see his message. He also watches his show. They're also friends. And Mark Levin has been criticizing President Trump a little bit, just hints of criticism, being like, no way you're going to give them money, right, Trump? You're not going to do that. You're not going to let them live like this. This doesn't make any sense. If there's like a longer period of time or ceasefire or this and that, like what about the Iranian people? And hopefully, now that Hajj is over and the points that the Islamic Republic and the United States have been making have just not been met. They've been butting heads this entire time. We have a couple of options here. We have, in my opinion, the most likely option going forward, which is an extension of this ceasefire, like another 30 days or something. And then the second most likely is going to the kinetic strikes, striking the regime. And third, just packing up, being like, all right, let's start moving troops out of the Middle East. And yeah, I wanted to see what you guys thought about that. Are we going to extend this ceasefire? Is it to the benefit? Who's benefiting from this extension of the ceasefire? How does the U.S. Help its cause like that? Because to me, it's like however closer we get to the midterms, or however much like this drags on, it costs a lot more, and the potential for a lot more things to go wrong. Like the regime can always just dump some oil into the Gulf again, nuclear waste, this and that, poison, whatever. So yeah, Ian, go ahead.
Yeah, what were the two conditions that the head of Mossad had for the collapse of the regime?
No deal is made with the Islamic Republic, and the blockade continues.
Okay, so can we interpret that as him just saying, sit tight and maintain the blockade?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, it's interesting. I'm definitely not advocating for that, but I think you can see in our community there's like a pretty wide ranges of opinions about that. And some people will say that we can't, basically the blockade is not enough. And others will say that I'm not sure where I stand on that, but I think of your three options, I think there's a possibility that Trump could sit tight for 6 months, and just wait until they break. But I don't know if that's going to happen, but I guess it's on the table.
Yeah, he could just wait for them to be weakened enough to the point where he can see a guaranteed victory, like 100%, not a 99. Jeffrey, why is it not in the benefit, or why is it maybe not as likely for us to just sit tight and wait?
Because the Mullah regime's remnants is going to pursue weapons of mass destruction no matter what. Like that probability is very high because of the pseudo-theological nature that underwrites the motives of the Mullah regime and its remnants. And they're in an increasing, an environment of increasingly positively selects for proliferation, to include not just developing stuff by themselves, just being given whole turnkey weapon systems, whether it's the Chinese Communist Party or Putin's criminalized counterintelligence state or North Korea, which is a very big proliferator, or elements out of Pakistan, not the entirety of Pakistan, some elements out of Pakistan. And that would constitute a unacceptable risk for Israel, particularly under Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's stewardship, apt stewardship at that Israel will be forced to act. And if Israel is forced to act and cannot hold those assets at risk conventionally, they may use unconventional means. And that would force us to act. That's why we did Operation Midnight Hammer. It wasn't just because the Mullah regime is bad. It wasn't just because we should back up our allies like Israel. It was, wow, it finally came to exactly what my threat risk and vulnerability assessment said in 2022, fall of, that was done for elements of the Zionist, like diaspora, retired flag officers for the IDF, right? There's going to come a time where the Mullah regime is going to get so close to a nuclear weapon that Israel is understandably going to tell the State Department, fuck you. We're not going to die quietly for someone's political convenience. They're going to make their best. They're going to take their best shot. Israel, while it's unbelievably capable, right? Those are like the IDF is unbelievably brave. They're also the size of New Jersey. They only have strike aircraft. The Mullah regime had spent, this is in 2022, decades burying and hardening and strategically dispersing all of their strategic assets, something that used to be called in the Air Force and DoD in the late 90s and early aughts, hardened, deeply buried targets, which actually resulted in the hardened, deeply buried target defeat program. So Israel's going to make its best shot. It's going to do a lot of good work. There's going to be things it cannot hold at risk conventionally. They know that there's going to be a mortally wounded Mullah regime that's going to come back with everything it has, which would constitute an unacceptable risk, existential risk for the state of Israel. And by definition, then Israel rationally will use unconventional means to hold them at risk. What that means is, say, an operation like the 12-day war and what predicated Operation Midnight Hammer is that you would have had Israel drop 3 nuclear weapons inside Iran. And that would have caused the risk of escalation would have been so ungodly high that it would have probably dragged everybody else in and you'd have a high intensity world war. So President Trump rightly sent in B-2s, dropped the massive ordnance penetrators, and even then it was like, oh, maybe 50-50. Had to take our best shot to bring that to short circuit the chain of escalation, not only defend our interests and our allies, also Iranian people. So what happened in the interim? The Mullah regime, even though they got their shit kicked in, I mean, they got the living shit kicked out of them by Israel and us in the 12-day war. They went right back to rebuilding their shit, and they were given assistance by the Chinese Communist Party, Putin's criminalized counterintelligence state, and every other asshole under the sun. Right? China gave them big, huge mixers that were 27 feet tall to blend up solid, ballistic missile fuel to upgrade the quality of their shit. And we ended up, then the Mullah regime got to a point that right before February 28th, like 2 days before, and this is after, the Mullah regime just slaughtered tens of thousands of Americans, operationalizing how fucking crazy they really are. They're setting up their missiles and drones to mass launch at our bases, our Israeli allies, Gulf state allies, and there was intelligence by General Avivi actually outlined it very clearly that there is a moderate to high degree of probability the Mullah regime is marrying chem bio warheads to their missiles. If the Mullah regime was able to mass launch all of them without having that capability suppressed, there's a good chance, even though Iron Dome or Israel's integrated air and missile defense, Iron Dome's a misnomer, that's like the lower tier, I'm just saying, as a moniker to denote all of it. While it would shoot down most of it, you'd still have some leakers. And if you have chemical or biological warheads or any WMDs hit Israel, Israel treats that as a nuclear attack requiring a strategic response. What's my point in all that? To illustrate, if the goal has to be, right, because of the nature of the Mullah regime, they cannot be allowed to have WMDs because they will fucking use them. And given the environment we're in, the only way to ensure they don't get that is to fucking kill them, because they're not going to not pursue it any other way.
Thank you. That's good perspective. We had Halda, Jilly, and Ian to respond in that order.
I think Jilly is before me because I was having number issues.
No worries. Okay, Jilly, go for it.
Yeah, hi. Look, I'm always mindful that there's a lot of players involved here, and there's a lot of levels to the conflict. And I think one of the aspects about how long the conflict is dragging out, and we have personal concerns, obviously. We have concerns about Iran, we have concerns about Israel, and it's easy for our lens to come in and focus on those particular things. But there's a wider game going on here, and it's a proxy war between the world powers, and it's being played out in the Middle East. And for example, China, one of the things when we wish that, oh, why doesn't Trump get this over with and all that sort of thing, China and Russia have an investment in keeping this conflict going, because it's they I believe that in the big picture, the continued involvement of Russia and China, the continuous way they keep undermining what America's doing with Iran, is part of a larger goal, which has to do with draining American resources, or attempting to drag the whole thing out so it will drain American resources. And also it has an added bonus of dividing the West. And I think it'd be really easy if we were just saying this is just about America and the mullahs, or this is just about Israel and Iran, and it's not. And that's something that we've got to keep in mind. And it's one of the reasons why I think this drags on and on and on, because there's so many agendas at play here, so many levels.
Yes, I completely agree with you. You're absolutely right. Ian, go for it.
As it Hall, I think Hall does before me.
Oh, hold up.
Thanks. It's kind of interesting because I just wrote an article about this, actually. I think that part of the problem really is, if you think about it, Trump is fighting 4 different fronts. So we're dealing with, not only does he have to deal with the Islamic regime and all their crap, okay, and he has to deal with their communication style, or communication methodology, or what drives them. You know what I mean? Like, so for example, when he was talking about executions and the deaths or the murders of all Iranians, in January, if you noticed, as soon as he started talking about that, there was an uptick in executions. So the regime took that compassion, or what they presumed to be compassion, and used it against him, in my opinion. I mean, of course, there's many reasons why they're executing. I'm just saying that I found that to be very disturbing. And so he changed his methodology, and he started talking to them in language that he felt that they would understand, which is money, power, oil, so the Hormuz, Strait of Hormuz. So not only is he dealing with them, but he also has to deal with the fact that Europe, who we should have been able to depend on, totally just is ignoring the situation, refusing to cooperate. So there's 2 fronts. Then he has to deal with the Middle Eastern issue of having, the Saudi Arabia, Oman, Qatar. They're not going to do anything to help. They're going to do, some of them are going to do everything in their power to be as difficult as possible. So there's the 3rd front, but the most important front in this instance, in my opinion, aren't those 3, but it's right here in America, dealing with the left. Because they are doing everything in their power to make sure that they, consistently interfere with this war effort. And not only are they doing that, but they're slowly pulling some, Republicans to their side. They are, obviously getting the public wound up. They've shut the government down, at least once. I think that we're under threat of it again, if I remember right. Our borders are still frickin' wide open. So there's so many different things that he has to cope with. So we have 4 different fronts that he's literally fighting, trying to get, things going with Iran. And I think that this is the safest thing that he can do, to just simply starve them out until there is no other option. And because I don't know how else he could do it, without just pissing off the whole entire world. And I hate to say that because it's wrong. And I can't even understand why our own country won't back our president. I certainly can't understand why Europe, that's just as an embarrassment. And the Middle East, who could definitely benefit from, Iran no longer being under the regime's thumb, Even Saudi Arabia is backing off. So you got a lot of different, chess pieces there, and they're all allies of ours. That's the biggest issue. So that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, well, it benefits them to be our ally when it's easy to be our ally. And
For sure.
yeah,
I just want the UK and Spain and France and Saudi Arabia and Qatar and Oman. Did I miss anybody? I just want them to ask for our help now. And I'd love it if we would just say no. That's just my take on it.
you can kind of compare, you touched upon it, right? Like the reason why everyone's seemingly against us is because there are other forces from Russia and China and others that have done their work. And this is like the reason that you're noticing that everyone's against the United States and what they want to achieve means that whatever those powers did worked. This is the result of it. It's just showing. It's like this is to the extent at which they insidiously creeped in, and this is the result. Now,
But at the other hand, I mean, do you really think that what's going on right now is not going to work?
I think it's going to work.
I think it's absolutely going to work. I think it's an awful way of doing it. I think that it's probably rather brilliant in its own way when you don't take humanity into account, which of course all of us are. We want everything fixed right now. We want Iran saved right now, Iranians saved right now. But unfortunately we're civilians. We have literally no freaking power, which just really froths me, because what I see are proxies running all over the goddamn world. They're carrying weapons all over the place. They're crossing borders. They don't end up in prison. But I can guarantee you that if we packed up our guns and said, you know what, we're going to go over there and we're going to help, bet you we'd end up in jail. I mean, I just don't quite understand how this works, really, in the big picture. But I will be quiet now.
No worries. You know how there's like 1,600 tankers stuck in the Persian Gulf? They have to choose between, today, am I going to wake up and coordinate with the IRGC to get a path out of the Strait of Hormuz? Or am I going to coordinate with the United States Navy and coordinate a path out of the Strait of Hormuz? Whatever I choose, I'm going to get hit by the other side and disabled my ship or killed. A lot of these countries are not even in that dangerous of a position. They're just cowards, plainly put. They benefited for decades or even longer by being associated with the United States of America as an ally. And now, exactly as how President Trump is saying, and justly so, now that they need them, they weren't there for us. And that's just reason for the United States to start pulling back its, as Jeffrey calls it, security umbrella and favorable terms, which, like, you've seen Trump do it with, like, medical pills and pharmaceuticals in Europe, tariffs on China, other countries. We're just pulling back everything that we're giving everyone, and we're going to focus on ourselves, because I mean our economy's not even doing that great. We got
what I personally think we need to do.
Ourselves.
Of course, you guys are going to think that I'm just crazy, and no, I haven't been drinking because I don't drink. But anyway, what I think that we should do is maybe we should just, since we are a world power, and since we do seem to do everything for everybody all the freaking time, maybe we should just develop our own little empire. Jeffrey is like, yeah. You know where I'm going with this one. And that's
to have your own empire is so much more costly and time consuming. But you know what you can do? You can achieve the same effect. Instead of conquering other countries and forcing them to be a part of your empire, you can just make them your vassals. Like, you can make them your underlings.
Sure.
And they answer to you. So from going forward, we're going to pick our allies very closely, like Poland, who's already showing themselves to be like independent of us. They're showing that they're capable of as an ally. So then we're going to go in, like give them a little boost and be like, okay, now you're actually someone who can benefit us. A lot of these other countries are just mooching off of us. And, you know, those people in those countries are going to be pretty mad. Like in Europe, they're going to be pretty mad when they're forced to get off of their socialist tendencies and actually find jobs and actually work.
Works
it's
for
not going to
me.
be, it's not going to be good for them. So we're going to pick our
It would be
allies much
kind
more
of cool
closely.
if we could have like the 50s, I don't know, 50 countries of America or something. Just saying.
Yeah, we can have 50. We can have a 51st state. I mean, Canada's a little bit less
It
than
just
willing.
sounds
But yeah. Anyway, enough with the jokes. Jeffrey, go ahead.
So, oddly enough, the tagline on my card when I was at Georgetown was U.S. hegemony without end, amen.
Without
And
what?
so there's something to be said about what Doc Halda said, something called hegemonic stability theory or hegemonic stability theory, which says the system leader is most stable when there's an uncontestable system leader that provides the public good of system stability and security. What's the issue regarding that? Like the long-term external elements that kind of undermine a system leader's position of primacy. That's if you're taking a look at Gilpin's War and Change World Politics. He's a defensive minimal realist, or Rassler and Thompson, who are like long cycle structural theorists and all this other stuff. A lot of long head stuff I had to read Georgetown. So she's not wrong, right? Strategic trade approach towards globalization, including our allies. We don't have to pull back as much as refocus, or what is it? Reallocate where we're going to put our stuff, right? So like President Trump was very clear. Why'd you pull stuff out of Poland? Put our troops back there. They had our back. That's great, Great Britain. You fucked us, no problem. We're going to pull all our shit out of Great Britain and put it in Poland and Romania, or the Baltic states, or say, you know, the Nordic states that all had our back. I mean, even Ukraine, and Ukraine's not even a member of NATO, backed us up. And they're under active threat of being exterminated by a modern Hitlerian douche canoe like fucking Putin, right? I mean, Allie's not wrong. Yet all these people, was amazing. When I went to a joint warfighters conference outside of Langley back in May 6th, 2010, and there was a panel that was headed up by the Supreme Allied Commander of NATO forces. He was actually a British Rear Admiral. And so the British Rear Admiral was trying to make this fucking argument that, you know, oh, we have to accept Britain and other actors as tier one, partners on joint research endeavors, particularly regarding the F-35, right? Because he wants to get some of the positive spillovers, right? Commercial spillovers. And so, you know, he argued that, well, you know, they carried out 85% of the strikes in Libya. And, you know, we have an aging population and a rising non-military public consumption, crowding out things like, investments in productivity and money you can allocate towards, say, defense. So I raised my hand and people there know me like, fuck, here it comes. And so I'm like, yeah, you know, I very much appreciate what you did. A couple of things, though. One, it's true you carried out 85% of the strikes in the first week. We still carried out 85% of the strikes overall. So I'm going to put that aside for a minute, Admiral, and I very much appreciate the 5 planes you sent, right? 5 planes is still 5 planes, though. Arguably, you have an older population and or a shittier healthcare system. So even if we were to take you on as a tier one partner, so you can get the positive spillovers because we're forced to do so, how would you do it? You know what he did? He buck passed to the Italian captain on the panel who was like, hot potato. And that guy, the Italian captain, sat right next to me in lunch right after that panel. And I was like, hey, Paisan, I'm sorry. I thought it was kind of shit. He's like, it's okay. What's my point? My point is, just like Doc Halda said, it's not that we have to pull out of NATO. We definitely need to. There's a reason Secretary of War Pete Hegseth said what he said at Shangri-La in Singapore. The time of free riding is over. You will pay your fucking way. We expect reciprocity. So great. You fucked us in trying to assist Iranian, brave Iranian kids that got slaughtered by denying us airspace or the use of our fucking airbase that we paid for. No problem. pulling all our shit out of your fucking countries and putting it in people who do support us. I absolutely believe we should do that.
It's a smart thing to do. You guys are right. Ian, sorry, I skipped over you. Please go ahead.
No worries, no worries. So I'm trying to take it back to the original question. Was you outlined 3 different potential futures? What were they again in your division?
So we had 3 options from most to least likely: extension of the ceasefire, kinetic strikes, and backing off.
Okay, so one of the things about extension of the ceasefire is, let's say the extension of the ceasefire means 6 months extension, right? Because that's what it takes for the extension of the ceasefire to actually lead to some kind of change, according to this analyst in Mossad, right? The big question then is, what does that do to the Iranian people? And are they in a position after 6 months to rise up? Along the same lines, if you look at the second option, which is restart kinetic strikes, this is kind of a third rail right now because a lot of people are very emotional about this particular issue. But it's worth asking, what is the end state of the next set of strikes? So I've heard different types of plans, right? I think Jeffrey has like a 5-day plan that he talked about, and then let's just say there's potentially another 30 days, or we have 2 aircraft carriers now, so it's going to be a lot bigger. They've been collecting targets for almost 45 days, so the quality of their targets is very high right now, and so there's a lot is going to happen in these airstrikes. But it's worth asking, once the next set of airstrikes is complete, can we then go in and remove the enriched uranium? Will they still be able to harass the Straits? Will there still be executions? And can the Iranian people protest after the next set of airstrikes? And that the answer to this question, and obviously I'd love to hear what Jeffrey has to say, the answer to that question sort of leads, okay, which of the 3 options then do you support?
Yeah, good lens to look at it, and it's through the lens of the Iranian people, which means that the United States and Israel have their own objectives that don't necessarily align with those of the Iranian people, or like us as the opposition to the Islamic Republic. For them to stop all of the above executions, one that does align with the U.S. interests is, can they still bomb the Strait of Hormuz? Can they still threaten ships that go along? That's really easy for them to do because they could just shoot missiles from further inland, and you already know that. You already know how hard it is to go in there and secure all that land and make sure there aren't any launchers over there with anything that can threaten the ships. It's like it's also a complicated issue, but at the same time it just boils down to like a couple of simple things. One is they have to go, because they can almost always have some level of agency. It doesn't take them too much to suppress the Iranian people. It doesn't take them too much to throw a couple missiles in the strait. So they just have to go. And then it always comes back to the Iranian people themselves. So you're right. If we wait too long and something happens which we haven't seen before, like every time the Iranian people's morale is crushed, they end up coming back and it's stronger. But let's just say, things haven't happened like this before. Maybe, who knows, right? The Islamic Republic could be way more cruel, way more oppressive than it already is. They can just go back to killing people indiscriminately on the street, to just whatever, right? Ton of options. So they have to go. The strikes themselves, I don't see any other way than to just kill as much IRGC as possible. I think that's the goal. Now, President Trump can go with 2 options here with the strikes. One, continue strikes, kill as many of them as possible. Then, after a certain point, you get another Ghalibaf, you get another, Adolshu, whatever, who comes and says, wait, uncle, wait. we want to stop. We want to give you everything you want. And then Trump could decide then, am I going to stop the strikes or am I going to continue the strikes while negotiating? So am I going to go back to this whole ceasefire, can stop the strikes, start negotiating, put pressure on them? Or are bombs really the best way of negotiating with someone? I've no doubt that if we go back to if and when we go back to the strikes, there will be people in the IRGC who come forward and say, stop, we'll give you the uranium, we'll let the ships go. We'll have to see what happens then. And I highly doubt we're going to stop at that point, because once we get this thing going, I see no reason for us to stop. This is like,
okay.
Yeah, go on.
Well, I just want to remark that I hate playing devil's advocate on this point.
No, please do.
Because but okay, have we seen them change their mind because of airstrikes? Right? I mean, I don't know that we've actually seen much of an ideological change in their negotiating position since that occurred.
Yeah, can I counter that?
So go ahead.
They haven't been weakened because the airstrikes didn't weaken them to the point where they could possibly just lose. Like they didn't get weak enough to the point where the Iranian people can rise up and just take over. But what if it does?
Yeah,
and then, but imagine I didn't say that. Like, go on.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of where to. It's really just a question of whether you need it or is it helpful. One thing I'll point out is that and actually I think this is a topic I want to bring up a little bit later, but in his speech today in Odessa, Reza Pahlavi talked about the degree to which the more by striking the regime, they've become vengeful, right? And so there's an issue of sort of like if you're taking a completely humanitarian, like I do care about the nuclear issue and stuff like that, but I think I personally care more about the humanitarian aspect of this. And if what you're trying to do is reduce the casualties within the Iranian people right now, then are airstrikes better, or is it better to continue this, what I'll call the siege, right? It's not the ceasefire, but it's really a siege of their ports. Which of those allows the Iranian people to kind of stay strong while the regime gets weaker?
Yeah. I see what you're getting at, and you're right. I mean, the airstrikes would not only result in less deaths of the Iranian people, would also end up speeding things along. It just,
by the way, I think Jeffrey should weigh in on this. He's itching.
Oh yeah, Jeffrey, go ahead.
Yeah.
Very kind of you, Ian. So, no, look, I want to save Iranian people too. The nuclear issue and minimizing the suffering of Iranian people are not separate issues. I meant what I said regarding escalation and where it will lead. So the initial air campaign was kicked off for two reasons, right? It was kicked off because Intel showed the Mullah regime is getting ready to mass launch, and there was a reasonably high degree of probability they were marrying chem bioweapons warheads to their missiles. And the other one is when Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu had shown President Trump what the fucking Mullah regime did to kids during the protest. He was so sickened and angry he had to walk out of the room for a minute. How did that play a role in the decision to strike? Because it illustrated operationally how fucked up and crazy the Mullah regime really is, and what that psychology would do if they had access to nuclear weapons or any weapon of mass destruction for that matter. So it's the escalate. So what was our goal? Our goal was to strike and stop the chain of escalation by suppressing Mullah strike capability. That was the main initial goal. And that was a pretty comprehensive target list we had to hit. Part of the other goal was to weaken the regime to set up the environment for it to be replaced. Albeit it wasn't like a direct replacement. It was like, first we have to stop this launch from happening, because if it happens and Israel takes chem-bio warheads, nukes will be used in Iran. We don't want that shit. So that's the first strike. To try, now why did I go through that? Because this is what CENTCOM has said about what will happen if the strikes resume. It's exactly what I've been outlining with 5x5. So CENTCOM Commander Admiral Brad Cooper briefed President Trump in the Situation Room on the final blow strike options. He said it will involve short, powerful waves of mass strikes, like I've outlined in previous shows, and the goal would be finishing degrading the Mullah regime's military capability. He outlined essentially 4 categories of targets. The remaining military assets, so hardened, hidden missile and drone sites, underground facilities, mobile launchers, like army-based conventional military. Leadership and command nodes, so every senior IRGC and regime command control locations are obliterated along with the fucking leaders of IRGC and Besiege. Infrastructure, remaining air defense, radar sites, weapon production facilities are all obliterated. Everything in the Strait of Hormuz, so naval and mine laying threats. So, all their little fast boats and Mosquito fleet and coastal sites, all gone. Mobile and dispersed targets, so things that they tried to do and shoot and scoot, that's all taken out. What does that mean? It means that the regime will essentially cease to exist as a regime. You still have all of the other like 450,000 to 2 million execution element crazies that the regime has dispersed AK-47s to. So that's why Ali very rightly said, His Highness Prince Reza Pahlavi, this is like phase 2 after the strikes, at least as best as I can see, would use his contacts in the Artesh and other places to stabilize and secure Iran as much as possible, right, to mass overt threats from the execution element. In other words, like people driving down the streets with technicals. It's not going to be the same as eliminating them when they fight a guerrilla campaign. Doing that allows the Iranian people the best shot at taking back their country and fully liberating Iran. Ultimately, you are going to have to train exactly what I said, which is 20,000 members. That would be what you'd probably need. 20,000 highly trained members of the anti-Mullah diaspora to be what amounts to 2,700 plus 8-man hunter-killer teams to do counterinsurgency and or anti-death squad activity and swarm through any number of cities in Iran to actively hunt down and slaughter execution elements of the IRGC and Besiege that have not surrendered and or fled. That's what has to happen. That is the cheapest approach, to the best of my assessment, both for the United States, our allies, and most importantly, Iranian people. That effort can be done along with the blockade and ramping up things like, we're taking all your Dark Sea Fleet oil tankers. We don't care where you go, but like we're hiding in Malaysia, nobody gives a hot fuck. Well, we'll go to the United Nations. Nobody cares. But it doesn't matter. File a fucking harsh letter. We're a permanent Security Council. We'll just veto that shit. And even if you had that, who the fuck is going to police us? Because that's what drives the world. Not perceptions of legitimacy, not strongly worded letters, force. That's where authority is derived, period. We will go into Malaysia's waters and take these fucking oil tankers. Malaysia, that doesn't even produce oil, has fucking delivered to China like 140 million barrels this fucking year. Where do you think they got that shit? That was Dark Sea Fleet oil from the Mullah regime using Malaysia as like this bullshit pseudo-neutral friggin' third party. All done. We're taking your oil.
Yeah, thank you.
Um,
That's the strategy. That is a surefire strategy. It's just a matter of approval. And Ian, please go ahead.
Oh, we can move on to the other topics if you want, but I was just going to say it's rather than I'm not going to push this too hard, but I'm going to drop my questions in because I think the base question, and I really am struggling with the answer myself. But the question is really, what is the end state of the next round of airstrikes? And I feel like the expectations in the community are all over the place about what things are going to look like after that. And I think it's important that we kind of talk about that. One thing that you pointed out, Ali, in the past was that when it comes to the protests, His Royal Highness Reza Pahlavi has one arrow in his quiver, and when he fires the arrow, he risks, revealing a lot of the people that are working with him, and many more protesters being killed. And so he has to be very careful about when he fires the arrow. And I'm suggesting that maybe the same thing is sort of true about Trump's next set of airstrikes. That and so that's why I'm so strongly considering what the outcome is, because that leads me to wonder why Trump would or would not do it. If he can do if this set of airstrikes is going to lead to another ceasefire, and then there's another set of airstrikes, and okay, then he has many of those arrows in his quiver. But if for political reasons or for some other reason he really only gets one more, then he has to think harder about it. And so that's why it's I think about this a lot. I don't know the answer. So that's all. I'll drop those questions in the chat for
Sure.
next time.
I mean, this is that's the whole point of the discussion group, is that someone brings up a point and another person goes devil's advocate, and that helps you make your argument more bulletproof. So you're only helping. And I think the goal of the end state. So guys, what Ian's wondering is, if we go back to strikes, what are we hoping to achieve with the strikes? What is the regime going to look like when the strikes are over? And Jeffrey was saying the Strait of Hormuz is going to be bombarded, going to be taken over. Maybe there's Marines who go in there, make sure that there's no missile launchers, boats, things that can stop the traffic. Then we're going to hunt down the IRGC everywhere across Iran. People on the streets manning the checkpoints, in their makeshift police stations, bases, anything, anywhere we can find them, you hit them. Not only them, tanks, armored cars, anything that they could possibly use that they haven't used before to suppress the Iranian people, you get rid of it. You don't even chance it, just get rid of it. Missile cities, all the entrances are gone, okay? Close them all. Everything you could possibly do, you're going to do it. 40,000 targets, 36,000 targets in a week. Maybe not even a week, just 5 days. The end goal is going to be a point where so many of these IRGC are defected, they don't show up for work anymore, or they're just running away. Because you can, there's a couple 100,000 of them, right? You can kill a lot of them, but in warfare, you destroy a portion of the army, the rest of the army starts running away. They'll be leaderless, as Jeffrey's saying, correct, and they'll be starved of money. The militia will see that they are the only ones standing, if they haven't already been bombarded to pieces, that they're the only ones standing between the United States, Israel, and the Iranian people. They're going to start leaving. It's going to be a huge, chaotic pit for the IRGC. And it's going to be the best window possible for the Iranian people to come out. Yes, there will be civilian casualties in a bombing campaign like this. Yes, we will mourn every single one of them. And yes, the Iranian people themselves would want this to happen rather than for them to suffer for more years under the Islamic Republic, which will kill them, 100%, guarantee. Let me. Oh, real quick. Okay, so Sherry, thank you for being a member. Sherry joined. Thank you, Sherry. She's in here right now. Fleshy Interloper also gifted a membership. Thank you. Also, you never told me where your profile picture is from. And Miss Hypnotic also gifted 5 memberships. Wow, thank you. Is that your wedding picture? Nice. And Fleshy Interloper with the question, super chat, who says, okay, the hard question, likely casualties? Yes. It's impossible for there not to be civilian casualties of the Iranian people because these IRGC guys do as, like, they literally pick places where there's Iranian people. They hide there so that they can push a narrative. I mean, first of all, they think that it'll make them more safe, and to a large extent it can sometimes. But when you see Iranian people casualties and you see the media come out and push this whole narrative of, oh my God, the United States is carpet bombing Tehran or something like that, don't believe it. Listen to the Iranian people. They themselves will tell you, please do this. We prefer this. We want this. And there will be casualties. I don't know exactly the number of it. I'm not sure if it will be more than a couple thousand, but it's a hard thing to say. And the way it'll happen is there'll be like an IRGC member in floor 4 of building, right? And then there's people in like floor 5 and 2 or 3. And those people might get hit. We hope they don't. But we'll see. But that's a good question. It's going to happen. You also have to ask yourself, how many more casualties are going to happen if the Islamic Republic stays alive? And I think Jeffrey wanted to. Jeffrey, please go ahead.
So, yeah, some of the munitions that would almost surely be used to sit there and minimize the collateral. So, first off, the IRGC very much tries to hide amongst non-combatants. That is the IRGC's urban shield strategy, which is exactly what Ali's talking about. Oh, they're going to place a school right like adjacent and connected to an IRGC headquarters. Everybody knows what you fuckers are doing. So there are certain ways that can be limited, not the least of which is the use of GPS-guided small diameter bombs, inert munitions, which means this is one of the things, again, me and some others pushed up the chain, which is you take the explosives out of the bomb and you just fill it with concrete, and now what you have is like essentially a really lethal lawn dart, right? That just kills predominantly with kinetic energy. So if, say, I don't know, a besieged douche canoe is trying to hide amongst non-combatants, he gets squished like nothing with a large. He plays essentially the same role that the coyote plays when he gets hit by a large rock, right? Ninja missiles, those are another thing we looked at, which is they use that on some of the bad guys involved in what happened in Afghanistan. It's essentially like a hellfire, except for instead of explosives, when it hits its target, it just like pops out 4 ninja swords and just slices people into guacamole. I mean, there's any number of different tech fixes to limit the collateral damage. And obviously, this administration particularly is like the Iranian people's well-being is very much on Donald's mind. It is not the only issue on his mind. It is definitely a very strong issue on his mind. CENTCOM, they are professional soldiers. They're not IRGC terrorist fuckers. Soldiers don't go out of their way to slaughter innocent people. Right? Of course, we're going to do everything we can to minimize collateral damage. I would contend the best way to save as many Iranian people as possible is to eliminate this regime as much as you can as quickly as possible.
Yeah, thank you. As quickly as possible is the goal, man. Noah, go ahead.
Yeah. So first, Jeffrey, that was I know you went ahead, but thank you for saying that. That was kind of you regardless. But I also wanted to say, like, in terms of like you're right, you're absolutely right. We're all absolutely right. In terms of like we can have the best precision, let me take this out, precision munitions in the world, and there will still be civilian casualties. Um that's sadly war. But you know what Israel does that no other country in the world does? They warn civilians. You saw that on IRGC, not IRGC. You saw that on IDF Farsi's Twitter and YouTube, and yeah, Ali, they'll call the buildings and say, "Hey, we're gonna bomb your building. You need to evacuate or something." So yeah, um, it. I mean, no other country does that. And in terms of continuing like this, like the blockade and everything else, the blockade needs to absolutely continue because there was a report out on Tuesdays. I can't remember the article. Can't remember what source he got it from, but he said that the IRGC would fall in 6 months because of starvation, and there would be mass uprisings. We already saw that when there were water shortages. Imagine when there will be absolutely no food left. Even IRGC members, because they even need to get fed, will be wondering, where's my food? So, yeah. Um, that's mainly all I wanted to say for right now. But yeah.
Yeah, you're on the right track. It was the head of Mossad who said 7 months. The region will fall if we don't have a deal
Okay.
and if we continue the blockade. So you're absolutely on the right path. Yeah. Well, Ian, did you want to respond or was there anyone else after Noah?
I have a topic, but
Go
whenever
for it.
you're ready. Okay, so His Royal Highness Reza Pahlavi was in Odessa today, and he spoke at the Black Sea Security Forum. And I don't know if you were able to watch the speech and the Q&A and stuff. I won't be able to do it justice, but he played some of the hits, but he also talked about he talked a lot about Russia, and he talked about the Shahed drones being a symbol of a Moscow-Tehran axis. And so a lot of it was about solidarity between the Iranian people and the people of Ukraine. And then the Q&A, which was also very interesting, was with, I actually don't know who it was, but it was like a resident of Odessa, who I think is involved with the military. And he, in the Q&A, Pahlavi reiterated that the Iranian people are the boots on the ground, and that was to a question as to whether or not he was expecting a U.S. invasion or something along those lines. But he also suggested that what was needed was external forces as a protection force because the Iranian people are unarmed. Okay, so that's one thing that could be a whole topic to discuss. But I also wanted to tie that in with this recent Garda Javidan video that came out, where in that the speaker says, "We are many, brother, so many." And so you could take this a couple different ways. One, if you want to talk about more about this Odessa thing, I couldn't find a transcript, so we might be a kind of flying blind there a little bit. But I would ask you, how compartmentalized do you think are the Garda Javidan? How much do you believe this gentleman who's saying that he believes there are many of them? And do you think that Pahlavi has much more information about this, and when he speaks about the Iranian people being the boots on the ground, is he actually talking about an armed force, or is he talking about protesters?
Yeah, so excellent points. Let's go for the Odessa conference. So Crown Prince Reza Pahlavi actually directly said that the architects of evil are Russia and the IRGC. And that was I love that statement. And, it makes sense that he goes into Ukraine and he does call Russia evil. And he's absolutely correct. And he started talking about the Shahed drones and everything that you said. And I love that. And then about the Guard of Javidon. So the Immortal Guard, guys, one, it's a loose term because anyone who is a proponent for Iranian people's freedom is technically like Immortal Guard. And then if we're just talking about, and that's what I think that guy meant, as in we are many, because the majority of the people in Iran want it. If we're just talking about the Immortal Guard who are like vetted, yes, these guys are getting support in some way, whether it's intel or weapons or whatever, that number is probably in the thousands. I don't know if it reaches like over a couple. I don't know if it reaches even 20,000. It's probably less than that. If you just want my estimate, but how am I even supposed to, give a correct guess on that? I'm just thinking logistics wise. I sure hope there's more than that. Sure hope there are more than that. But just keep in mind, it's been 4 or 5 months since the start of this. And then we also had, since the 12-day war, a lot of Iranians who joined Mossad traveled to Israel, got training there, came back, and were just sleeper agents. And they did carry out operations during this kinetic phase. I'm slightly skeptical when I hear some videos like that of, we are many, we are this, we are that, because at the end of the day, it can just be someone covering themselves up and having the best intentions and being like, yes, we are Guard of Javidon, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. And then when it comes to the actual event, the call to action, you're like, wait, I thought there were supposed to be, tens of thousands of these guys happening like all over the place. So I want to wait and see on that. And I really hope it's true. Like, oh my God, I really hope it's true. These guys are the best and brightest. Was there any part that I didn't answer?
No.
Yeah, but I really like that you're all caught up and you're watching all of this and you care so much. I really appreciate that. Did anyone want to?
Well, I can.
Yeah, go for it.
I can opine a little bit more if you want.
Sure.
Okay, so in a conversation I had on one of the discussions with Armin, this is actually we had talked about Tehran, and of course I've never been to Tehran, right? So and so one of the things that was kind of eye-opening to me is that there's a big difference in the kind of culture of in Iranian culture between North Korean culture. And I'll sum it up in North Korea, you have full-on Stalinism going on. So if you speak out of turn to your uncle or something like that, they might have to report you, and you could end up in a prison. As Armin put it, in Iran, it's a little bit different. So in Iran, there's so much opposition to the regime that you can have a conversation with your taxi driver about how much he hates the regime. And so because of that, it asks the question of like how easy or hard is it? How fearful are people of organizing? And what size are the groups that are organizing to do these strikes that we see inside of Iran?
If you want to talk to someone and just have a conversation about hating the regime, you have like a 98% chance, literally, of running into someone who is willing to criticize the regime or hates them. The hard part is when you're trying to organize other people to talk about it, because now you have recorded communications, texts, posts, calls. That sketches out people more. So that's the obstacle there, especially because in 2009 we had the grain movement. We were using Facebook like for the majority of like the, hey, show up here on this day, we're going to have protests, this and that. And the regime cracked down on that super hard and a ton of arrests were made. So people are really paranoid about the online thing. Even from like, this will be anecdotal, but whenever I talk to someone in Iran, it's like the same thing, the fear of having to talk about this stuff and like getting information or whatever out of them. They like, you can feel hesitation immediately when you ask a question like that. And I imagine that most interactions electronically are like that. In person, people are going to be cussing out the regime left, right, and center as much as you want. And a really easy sign of resistance actually is people walk around without hijab on. Most people are walking around without hijab on. And the regime is only now starting to crack down on it again. And why? Because a lot of the younger regime, IRGC, Basij, etc., super radical. They hate the Iranian people at this point. They hate them. They actually hate them. They're not gonna hold back when it comes to being cruel. And it causes fear. But for this last 10-15 minutes, I was going to guys, I'm gonna pause, or I'm gonna end the stream here, and I'm gonna hang out in school with the members here. And I really appreciate you guys showing up. But yeah, I will be live just like I am every day. So tomorrow with Armin. I look forward to seeing you guys there. Before I go, I just wanted to give a shout out to Curtis West, who gifted 5 memberships for my channel. Thank you, Curtis. I actually looked at the people who got memberships, and Fleshy Interloper was one of them. So really appreciate you. You're awesome. And good night, guys. I really appreciate everyone who showed up. Peace.